Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 227. I'm Carl.
And I'm Josh.
And we're here for your entertaining pleasure, I suppose. This episode is titled Adeptus Titanicus Maximus. Because why not?
Because why not?
Because why not? You're going to hear about an event we participated in this last weekend, which caused a little bit of a delay in our recording here, so apologies for the delay. But we're also going to get some of the event organizers on video here to talk to us as well about how they went setting this thing up, where they come from. I mean, we've known these guys for years, but
10 plus years, but just all the ins and outs, the inspiration.
Yeah. So it was a fantastic event. We'll get more into that later. But let's kick off the show here, and let's start with thanking our show sponsors, who are Charlie Brasley and Tariq Azam, two of our Patreon supporters.
Yep.
We couldn't honestly be doing this without you at the moment, so we very much appreciate everybody's support who's involved in our Patreon. We also just recently released the latest episode of our live play of Dark Heresy, and we've got an interview for our
Influential Faces of 40K.
Yeah, coming up very shortly. So I've reached out to those folks, and you're not involved, Josh, but I actually talked to John French, and I'm talking to him this Sunday to add content for the Dark Heresy playthrough, since he and Alan wrote the whole adventure we're playing through. So we'll get his take on where we stand to this point so far.
I can't wait to hear what he says about how it was envisioned to how it actually played out with our group. So I think that's going to be fascinating.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. You'll hear.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we're going to talk about Adeptus Titanicus a little bit and the event we attended, and how I was adamant that I wasn't going to get into Legions Imperialis, and now I'm buckling under the pressure.
How the tides have turned.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that high progress. Okay. So let's talk about Elite Choice.
Yep, absolutely.
I'll go ahead and go first. I chose Matthias Angner and his Space Marine captain here.
Yeah.
Number of things, number of reasons. One, I find lighter colors like he has done to be difficult.
Yeah.
And I love the look of this Marine. I love the color schemes on the Marine. Now that I look at it a little bit, it is red, white, and blue, which, although it's more white, red, and blue.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
The predominant color here is white.
Little red accent, and then the blue, just so the power weapon, just that glow. And
I think the bolter looks cool.
Yeah.
In blue,
I don't think I've ever seen a blue storm bolter. I think it looks awesome.
I would not have thought to have done that, but it looks badass, honestly. I'm a huge fan of this model. I'd love to see a whole army like this. Yeah. The vehicles would look sick.
That white not being a pure white, but like multiple dirty light shades of gray, and the weathering and
so
the whole thing. Yeah, it's a really gorgeous model. And that is one of the best. There's a detail shot of that family too, of just the face on there. Like one of the best faces I've seen in a while.
So just killer work. I love it. And then to offset it against the Martian background with a little bit of rubble.
Yep.
Solid piece here.
Red base ties in the red accents on there, but also really separates the white of the model. So it really pops and really well done.
Power weapons done minimal, but looks superb. I mean, just real eye for focusing on the right details. Even the glow coming off the back vents of the power pack of the Terminator armor look really sick.
Yep.
So
A very subtle OSL on that.
Yeah. I love it. And sometimes I pick these because I'm just jealous of the standard that this is done to. And in particular, that color scheme is very difficult for me. So love it. Great work, man. What'd you pick?
Yeah. I picked a Nil Tweed and his Voton Sagittars.
Yep. And I saw these come up, and I was like, I'm going to snatch this. And I'm like, I'm going to wait and let Josh pick this time.
It's your original host advantage of setting up the show notes. You get first pick.
But before you go into the detail on this, but not only that, it's like this time around.
Yeah.
Like I struggled between
a lot of choices,
like 4 or 5 different things. Yeah. And then I got like for the first time ever, I felt like, I don't want to say a painting judge, but like I started looking at like, okay, I like this one. What well, this little piece of it is not as well done as this thing. Like,
it had to get more granular in order to get, because there's so many good things in the community right now, which, I mean, spoiled for choice, which is great, but
I had to get super critical to come to my conclusion. But this one was on there. Yeah. But the only reason I didn't pick this one was because I was like, I'm going to let Josh pick first, because I think Josh might pick these.
Yeah. So these are fantastically painted. The Sagittars are the kind of the 6-wheeled, kind of beetleback looking transports for Votann.
I think of them as like moon buggies.
Yeah, moon buggy, very, very apt. Just what Neil has done here. It's an interesting color palette, and I don't know. The Votann that I have seen the most are the orange Votann, which I really like that look of it. So I don't know if this is one of the official houses.
I don't know enough about them
of Votann. Yeah, at this point, but it's purple, white, and this kind of like teal blue, and it's just really well done. The weathering again is fantastic. Even just like the texture of the kind of rubber look on the tires is just a really nice little attention
to the gloss of the
gloss of the canopies. Yeah, not only is it a really nice kind of feathered light effect on the blues there, but then also applied a gloss varnish, like a spot gloss varnish on the canopy to really give it that kind of extra bit of realism and sheen to those reflective surfaces. It's there's 2 of them there, so, and they both look incredible. Got a couple different weapon loadouts and just really executed to a masterful degree there. And if the rest of the army looks this good, like that is going to be a gorgeous force.
Yeah. You know, that purplish color that's on it was, it's interesting because when several years ago back at Adepticon, I took a GW painting course taught by none other than Duncan. Two Thin Coats Duncan at the time when he was at GW. And we painted one of the dwarves from Age of Sigmar at this point.
Okay.
And as he walked us through, they told us what colors to use, and that was the color we used on the dwarf. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. And then by the time that color was done, by the time I was done with the model, I was like, this color's kind of cool. Yeah, and so I saw that in this, and I was like, oh, that's that color we used. That was kind of cool.
This color combo, I mean, this is maybe a slight bias on my side because all my Legios, the Stobiax Titans, are that purple, white, and gold, and this is
close.
It's reminiscent of it's purple, kind of a light blue, off-white almost, and then silver instead of gold. But it's a great looking color combination.
Yeah, it really
done really well.
Great work to both of them. So let's talk about Shell's Kiss.
Yes.
Because this is funny. I was talking to Shell last night about it, and I was like, you got to pick your mom. She's like, oh, man. She goes, I picked one, but I don't want to get into a theme of me picking these. And I said, well, which ones did you pick? And Josh, it's funny because these came up, and you said...
I almost tagged her in the post and be like, hey, Shell, here's your Shell's Kiss for the next episode.
And this is what you like. So we've got her dialed in.
We know her number.
Likes. Shell has chosen Andrew Land's Tyranids, which Andrew said that he had jumped on with his 10-year-old daughter and asked if she was interested in painting. And she immediately said yes. And he wanted to encourage that. And even though it may not, you don't know that this will ever carry on into something, but it's nice to do a project with your family.
Yeah.
So, of course, that's the key piece that Shell was like, I don't want people thinking I'm just picking family things. I go, well, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Right.
So if we see a spate of people suddenly painting with their kids, clearly you're angling for Shell to pick your
She's
models.
Not the only one to pick that, though. We've had the last few episodes, there's been some kind of father-child interactions
for sure.
Elite's Choice and Shell's Kiss and things like that, which it's really cool.
I love it
this time of year. Especially.
I love it. I think I still have the recording when I interviewed my kid about their space marines, their chaos space marines,
the puddles,
the devil dogs.
Yeah, nice.
And I still have I couldn't. They're terrible. They're terribly painted, but of course it was fun.
Yeah.
And I think I still have them around here somewhere because I was like, I can't throw these away.
No, that's an artifact.
So anyway, Andrew painted these Tyranids, and they are a riot of colors, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Right. Not something I would have picked, but it's interesting that Shell and I had the same thought because as she was describing them, I'm like, oh, I know which ones you're talking about. And she had said, when I look at them, I think about like coral reefs and this kind of thing, and which was interesting because that is exactly where my thought had gone. My Tyranids are painted because I had this whole backstory where they come from like it's a splinter fleet that wound up on a swamp planet, and so they adapted to that, and so they're kind of swamp colors. And so this kind of touched my point of, I could see like these underwater kind of, adapting Tyranids. And Shell, I think her commentary on this was, I know it's a grim, dark universe, and aliens are always dark and grungy, and but they don't have to be like. This is a really cool thing. I go, well, what about the Eldar? They're not. She goes, but they're not aliens. And she goes, wait a minute, they are aliens. She goes, but I mean like aliens, not like
that's fair.
Yeah, and I was like, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but they're alien. They're Xenos, and they all need to die.
And it's interesting that you say about the grimdark because the daughter here was not into the grimdark theme. Aesthetic, exactly, and that was a big part of why the neon nids came to be for those bright colors and. Just really, really well done. And it's a neat application of not only is it just an explosion of colors and very bright colors.
Yeah.
But it also has some very natural elements in there, especially with like the head, kind of the chitin pieces of the head there, where you get more of that kind of the dappled dots and just more of the natural.
The fade from the blue to the orange, blue through purple to the orange to the yellow is fantastic. And I mean, when I think part of why I think of like an aquatic type of thing too is because I look at this model, and he shows several, but I'm looking at this one, the kind of final one, and it has clearly aquarium plants in it and stuff. So,
sure. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, man.
I think it's a great call out.
Yeah. Yeah. So good call out for Shell, and congratulations to Andrew Land. You drew my wife's attention. As long as it's not on me, I'm okay. Yeah. So that's our intro here. Let's take a short break. We're going to come back, and then let's get into hobby progress and games played, because we got quite a bit going on there. Yeah. This go round for both of us.
Yep.
So I'm kind of excited to talk about that. So we will be right back. All right, and we are back. Talk about a little bit of hobby progress and games played. So let's start with some hobby progress. And Josh, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'll go for the cliff notes here because I have been busy. But
take your time, buddy.
Last episode I talked about picking up the Space Marines Codex and a couple of the Jump Assault Intercessor units, and really leaning into the Stormlance task force that Marines have there, which is very like run, charge. Very fast, mobile, and assault based, which is super fitting for the Sharkadon. So, with that in mind, having finalized my 2,000 point list that I'm going to, start as the Primaris, like this is really where I want to start this force for 2,000 points. I've built most of what I need to fill in what I haven't already built or painted for that army. So, in the last couple of weeks since we recorded, I finished the rest of my Outrider squad, which is 6 bikes, 6 of the Space Marines on bikes.
Painted or assembled?
Assembled.
Okay.
Yeah, this
is all assembly.
Just assembly for this go around. Built a lot of things. Not
you say just, but this is a lot.
Yeah. To go with that squad, I also built Chaplain on bike and the Invader ATV, which is the kind of Mario Kart looking guy on the back there.
Dune buggy looking
buggy, which I built with the multi-melta just to give that unit some little extra anti-tank in there, because it's going to be very assault heavy, but it's good to have some options. Additionally, I built the Impulsor, so I can get some transports in there, keeping some of my boots on the ground alive. And I also built the Storm Speeder, which again is going to have a little bit more anti-tank into that. These are the new land speeder type models.
Right.
Again, just more mobility, very fast, and more anti-tank on there. The big thing I did, obviously, was I did finish the final touches of painting the corrupted Warlord Titan.
You did.
That was
and he looks fantastic.
Thanks. I'm
like from concept to execution, did it meet your kind of expectations?
It's really close. Yeah. The original vision I had for it, which those of you watching the video can see how the final turned out. It was really close to how it actually turned out. I had in my head a little bit more of kind of the warp entities going around it to kind of replicate
almost like a ball around it.
Almost right? Not a like full ball, but yeah, giving it very much the almost a void shield like
hint of a sphere
of a sphere around it,
right?
Which I definitely went lighter on that in the final, and partially I just didn't want it to be that busy, and it would be so fragile to actually build something with very kind of spindly spirit host models like that to embody that whole void shield sphere type effect. But then I pivoted in some directions, like added the kind of the breath flame effect on that one, which just gave it that kind of corrupted feel, and like it was so fun to put together. It was a really fun model too.
I like how you keep referring to it as lightly corrupted. It's like clearly like off the deep end.
Yeah, no, that one I committed on that one. That was
You made a comment I saw online about it where you were saying like, now this is like the 12th Titan I've assembled or whatever. You know, I felt a little more confident in kind of chopping it up.
That was 16.
Okay, 16.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, those Titans are not cheap. Like you're not paying full Titan, right? Right. But the Titanicus Titans are not, it's not an inexpensive model that you are buying. So chopping it up probably comes with a little bit of nerve wracking. How did your nerves handle like all this that you did?
You know,
were you very confident?
16 Titans in, I was pretty confident on it. Definitely had the clear vision for what I wanted to do and going into it. Part of what helped me commit to it though, is I did buy the Titan partially assembled.
Okay.
So I bought it used for less than half the price of what a Titan kit costs. So that definitely
So even if it went horribly
helped
wrong,
remove some of those inhibitions, like not a huge investment. And I knew I could pull off something out of it, even if how I envisioned it didn't pan out. I would have gotten something in the end that I would have been pretty happy with. But yeah, having built scale models for 32 years now, and this being my 16th Titan assembling, and the previous Titan that I did before was also a corrupted Titan where I was doing a lot more cutting and manipulations that way. It was pretty comfortable with it, and it really did turn out.
It drew a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people came over to look at it and were like, whoa, you know.
It's definitely got some presence. Yeah.
Excuse me. But yeah, I think it's interesting that the scale of the Lord of Change heads worked so well with it, and the fact that you then pulled in like Age of Sigmar models to be these spirits kind of coming out of it.
Yeah, kind of warp entity spirit host. Yeah, I thought it worked really well. And all the corrupted bits are definitely a more bright color palette, like all the green kind of warp things, but then also the Lord of Change heads being more of a traditional kind of blue color really do help it pop off the standard kind of Legio Zestobix color palette of purple, gold, and white. So that was really fun. I'm really happy with how that turned out, and was great to prep it just in time for the event we were going to head up to. So that was pretty perfect there. In addition to that, I did find, without getting price gouged, 2 Eldar tanks, Fire Prisms / Night Spinners, which are kind of the last real models that I need at this point to really get going on that.
You'd been looking a while.
Yeah, and they were going for stupid money on eBay and no store. They just don't exist in retail stores right now. So I found them for retail price, which I was...
Maybe that's what the GW news is going to be tomorrow.
Yeah, just stuff is back in stock. Like they'll make people happier with that announcement than they would with any new thing they're actually going to preview.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so pretty jonesing to get going on the Eldar Force now that they've been toned back a bit, and I have pretty much everything I need to really get going on that that army. So in a good spot with a hobby there. Lastly, I did start and finish, just while building all this, I was listening to audiobook of The Twice Dead King, which I really enjoyed. This is a story told from a Necron perspective, which is really fascinating. Necron Royals perspective, I should say. Which is really interesting to hear all the ins and outs about just the kind of the component and technological differences of what royal members of the Necron court have versus immortals, lich guards, warriors, etc.
Interesting.
Everything down below. So there's a lot of kind of like cognitive processors and mind splitting, and it's really interesting. It's a neat story, and just a really cool perspective to actually
Do you remember who the author is off the top of your head?
I don't remember off the top of my head, and it's not one of the regulars that I've read or heard.
But you're enjoying it.
But I enjoyed it quite a bit. Yeah, I did finish that yesterday. And
Interesting.
It's one of the first books that I have read in 40K that is not a non-imperial perspective.
Yeah,
also.
It's pretty rare.
Or chaos. There's also chaos ones with.
But it's pretty rare they do Xenos.
Yeah, and so that alone was pretty novel and fascinating. And me, obviously being a Necron player since second edition when Necrons first came out, it actually changed my perspective of how the army plays, which I appreciated. And like, yeah, I don't know, it was
interesting.
It was good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So.
Okay.
If you're into Necrons at all, check it out.
Well, on the other side of the fence, I'm listening to The End and the Death Part 2 of the Siege of Terra series.
Yeah.
It's a slog.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's Dan Abnett. I know they were originally going to do one book, and then it broke down into 2 books, and now it's 3 books. I'm halfway through it, and it's not been my most enjoyable experience in the Siege of Terra series. There's
a lot of positioning of what's going on, and there's just like more military maneuverings,
yes,
and political,
yes,
yeah,
and it
not a lot of action though.
No, there's action through the whole thing, but even there, it's like,
why does this matter? Get to the point.
It's hard. I mean, I have to be critical of it in the sense that, you know, I'm not, unlike Dungeon Crawler Carl, I am not like, I have to hear what happens next. I'm like, more of this. Now, to be fair, like this massive siege of Earth is going on, and it is a big grind and all this stuff. But I think from the perspective of the reader, you don't need to make me feel I'm the one doing the grinding. And I do. I know they're trying to wrap up a ton of storylines, and Dan's writing it's still great. Like his writing's great. It's just at a certain point you're like, and we're getting to the end. And I don't want them to Game of Thrones the ending, where it's like too short.
Right. Yeah.
But did this need to be 3 books? I don't know. I'll let you know at the end. Maybe there's a bunch of big twists toward the end that are payoffs, but right now I'm struggling, and I'm normally a pretty aggressive reader on this stuff. So
yeah. I'll be curious if it's book 2 where you get Sanguinius falling and the Emperor going down.
I think this particular.
You think it's
like
book 1?
Okay.
And then
I'm on book 2.
Oh, okay.
This is book 2 of 3.
Got it.
Because now they divided it into 3 books, not just 2.
Yeah.
Which at a certain point I go, all right, come on, So how many more of these special editions do I have to have heart attacks trying to buy? Because the servers get crushed under the purchase, and I thought this was going to be the last one, and then it's like, okay, there's one more, okay. And at this point, if I'm missing one, it's like, what do? You've
got all the rest of them.
And I've said this multiple times, like if I don't get one of them, I'm selling the whole thing.
Selling the whole collection.
Like, what's the point? I'm not gonna pay an exorbitant price for one book that I'm missing. It's just not that important. Having the whole set would be nice. I don't know if I would have done it. I don't know if I would have gone down this road knowing now what I knew then. Anyway, long story short, I'm feeling like it's a bit of a slog to get through. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not. I'm just not super engaged in it, and I want to be, and I'm not.
Yeah,
so
that's too bad.
I've been listening to that. I painted up 2 Knight Lancers for the Titanicus event.
Yeah, you did.
Which paint up relatively quickly.
Yeah.
I had fun, getting back into it and playing with my airbrush a bit, and I neglected to do one thing on them that I wanted to do. I'll go back and do it which is a little bit of glowing effect, on the lances themselves. But you and I played a game in preparation, really for me in preparation, although
I needed the reps.
We'll talk about it. We played a game prior to going to this event, and I borrowed 2 of your Lancers because it rounded out my list really well. I'm super happy with my list. So
yeah,
I immediately came home, assembled the 2 I had, and was like, all right, let me paint these things up real quick so that I don't borrow Josh's and they match my scheme. So did that. I also finalized my Black Legion scheme, and I'm about halfway now through 10-man squad. I put this off forever and ever, and then I was like, finally, after doing the class with Caleb, I was like, I'm going to go back and redo everything I started. And I just looked at how much I had done, and I was like, I really don't want to restart on all this.
Yeah.
How can I what's the word I'm looking for?
It's not salvage, because they're
kind of like, but how can I salvage the work I've done on these so far? So I'm very happy with the results. Again, once I take a picture of it, I don't like the picture I took, but I think when I look at the model in person, I'm like, yep, I'm very happy with this result. You actually raised an interesting point, was you said, this might also do well with an oil wash. And I'm like, yeah, let's
I think it would really bring it home.
I think it might. And so we'll throw an oil wash on this guy and we'll see how it goes. I also have to do the decal.
Yeah.
And so I have a bunch of decals set aside for it, but I'll do all that, and then we'll oil wash the thing and see where it goes from there. But I think it will. I think it'll help blend some of the things that are not quite as blended as I would want, and smooth out some of the transitions a little bit. I think it's
totally agree. Yep.
So, but with that, I'm already starting on the next guys to get them ready for that stage. So like I can get them all to this stage. I'm very happy with the results and
awesome.
Moving forward on that.
Yeah.
I fooled around with speed paints and slap chop on a Tyrannid, the Screamer Killer, I think.
Screamer Killer Carnifex.
Yeah, and I don't know why. It was one of those things. I'm kind of going through like hobby ADD at the moment, where it's like it was sitting there, and I was like, I wonder how this works if I slap chop this guy up and then use my airbrush with these speed paints, and how close can I get and make it look better? The results I got, I'm happy with. I still think I could have done better. The brown, when I laid the brown down through the airbrush onto like the carapace and such, it kind of obliterated some of the highlights the undercoated highlights I had done.
Yeah.
And so I think I need to go a little more extreme on those highlights to get the results I'm
for the dry brush. Or would you highlight above that?
I could do either.
For this model, you'd go back and highlight above.
I'd have to.
For future models, you would do a more aggressive.
Yeah, for sure.
Dry brush.
But I did a couple other.
I think it looks great.
I did a couple other techniques that I've been wanting to try out, and they worked out quite well. Again, using some speed paints in there too.
Yeah.
On the arms, there are these particular kind of exposures of some of the musculature. There's like these little slits.
Yeah.
And I was, on my previous models, I kind of ignored those for the most part, and I regret having done that.
Yeah.
So I went back and on this guy, I just filled those in with some white, and then I went over the white with a pink, not the speed paint, the Citadel contrast paint.
Yeah.
And that got exactly the color scheme I was looking for. And so, I'm very happy with the results of him.
That's a good way to introduce just a little bit of contrast to that scheme too.
Exactly. So, very happy with the results of it. I could paint up the rest, but I'm not really focused on Tyrannids again. It was just more of I don't really feel like painting more Black Legion guys at the moment. Let me just knock this thing out and experiment a little bit with this at no real loss to.
It's a palette cleanser.
Yeah. And so, I did get some painting in. I feel like I made some good progress there. I also cleaned up my entire paint area because it was just, it was prohibitive to actually getting work done. And so now I've got some paints out and organizers and working on a couple other things just to make it a better hobby area, but it's cleaned up so that I can quickly do work and then step away from it. So, a little bit of clearing the mechanism.
Honestly, that's one of the best things you can do for hobby progress is just prep that space, have your dedicated space, have it clean, focus for whatever project you're working on.
Yeah, I spent a bunch of time just kind of cleaning the game room. Like my game room's just gotten more and more cluttered and out of control. And so, I've cleaned up a bit and organized a bit. And, I've still got a bunch of Doug stuff here that needs, we got to do photos and sell that stuff off and raffle it off, whatever. And, Yeah. I'm also Adon a while back, like a couple of years ago, did this thing where he was going to be like net zero for the year. Like he was going to sell things to fund other hobby things. And I've been giving that a lot of thought as well. I have a lot of some armies, some models that are still in packages or projects that I thought I was going to do and are never going to get done. And I'm like, maybe I should sell off some of this stuff to fund things that I am interested in doing.
Yeah.
More Titanicus stuff or Legions Imperialis or something along those lines.
I fully encourage this.
Stupid Legions Imperialis. Can we talk just for a minute?
Stupid,
the stuff
beautiful
is going on pre-sale tomorrow. You can go back and listen to 3 or 4 episodes ago where I was like, I am not going to get involved in Legion Imperialis. And then we could go to this Titanicus event that we're just talking about here. And next thing I know, I'm like, okay, how much should Legions Imperialis stuff cost? Okay. How do I want to buy?
You already got Titans. That's a quarter of an army.
And I'll tell you what else got me.
Yeah.
Is this stupid White Dwarf and their stupid battle report for Legion Imperialis and the White Dwarf. I mean, if you want any proof that like marketing works,
I was just gonna say.
Right? Like it nailed me. It nailed it. And it was like, I looked at the base starter set for this Legion Imperialis thing that's coming out. It's like, okay, you have these and you have Solar Auxilia in it and you have some Space Marine units and a Titan and I'm like, or a couple Titans and I'm like, I don't want any of this. Like, well, actually, I only want the Space Marine stuff.
Yeah.
And then as I was thinking about it, I'm like, I'm not going to get into this. I just want to do a Space Marine force. And then, oh, look, they have an entire it's just Space Marines for a force in this battle report. So you can just do Space Marine.
You can absolutely do just Space Marines. And you can bring in your Aeronautic Imperialis Marine planes. And
except Titans. I don't have any of those. I have Eldar ones. I'm glad we covered that just
Those
in
are
time.
still available.
I'm still bitter about that. Like, just as I was like, this is a really cool game. Oh, it's dead? Oh, okay.
You can still play it.
Yes.
There is some, Sky mentioned this a couple episodes ago when we had him for the 10th edition release, is that there is something nice about playing a dead game at that point. And
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You make it your own. You make whatever changes you feel need to be there.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as you can get the models.
Sure.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. Well, 3D printers.
Enter 3D printers.
Yeah. Now, that being said, so I haven't spent any money on Legions Imperialis. I'm not ruling it out now. I'm going to get into it at some point. When is the right time for me to get into it?
Sure. Yeah.
So that being the case, I mean, maybe I sell off some stuff that's just not ever going to happen. I mean, even at a significant loss in some cases, because like, what am I doing with this thing?
Yeah.
I have a garage full of stuff that it's like,
more opportunity than you need.
I've got this rare captain that, what am I?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been similar to that for years, which is why I'm now building my 4th Eldar army.
More opportunity than you need. That just sank in. It took me a second.
So I've been selling off projects. If just the passion isn't in it anymore, I don't want to add anything else to it. I'm not playing that. Like a lot of people will hang on to armies and they'll sit there and collect dust, but they're still part of your collection. You've got the pride of this. I painted this and
the Minotaurs. I spent a couple grand on those guys to buy them from Ed because there's a historical value to those things.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm never going to play those guys.
Right. Yeah.
I'm never
especially since Marines just aren't your jam.
Well, not only that, they're
all small Marines too.
They're small Marines. There's a ton of Forge World stuff in there that's not going to be supported anymore. It's like, okay, but I own that was in these books. Oh, wait, they don't make those books anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I'm still glad I have it.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. But in retrospect, it's like, should I want this? Probably not, but it does have an emotional value.
Yeah.
Does it bring me joy? It still does.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. It's an impressive collection.
It is. It's not getting used. But that being said, like I'm still hell bent on at some point doing my sister's battle. I'm not going to sell any of that off, but I do have a lot of stuff I could probably unload and then repurpose those funds into Legions Imperialis, which is probably what I'll end up doing.
That's same for me. Even with the Marine stuff that I have, like it's all Primaris stuff, so it's all new and relevant, but it's just not the direction that I want to take.
Sure, somebody wants to go that direction.
Like I have no doubt I'll be able to offload it pretty quick, and it'll go to a good home where it's going to get used for its intended purpose versus just sitting in my hobby room. So and those funds will go towards Legions Imperialis.
Cool. Well, that being said, let's talk games played.
Yeah,
and I want to leave the games that we played at the Gothamos Gaming Group event off this discussion. We both played a game up there.
Yep.
And I say up there, Chico, which is north of us, northeast. But we'll leave those off. Suffice to say, we did play those games. We will talk about those in the next segment.
Yep.
But what we did do, you and I played a game together, 2,000 point preparation game,
right?
As I just alluded to, of Titanicus for. You wanted to experiment. You're running a very unique list. Talk about your list.
Yeah, so my list is
ineffective.
It worked pretty well.
Worked better against me than it did.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there in the next segment. I do have, it's kind of an extreme list in that it's the I can never remember the pronunciation. Myrmidon. Myrmidon. Yeah. Myrmidon mana pool, which is very warlord heavy. So in a 2,000 point list, I only had 4 models.
Yeah.
So I had 3 warlord titans, one being the new corrupted titan, and then I also, in addition to that, had a corrupted reaver titan. So only 4 titans, which in an alternating activation game has some potential issues of just being able to be outflanked, outmaneuvered, outactivated, things like that. Yeah. They're very durable, and when it works, I think it works really well.
But when it doesn't work, losing a Titan, you lose 3/4 of your effectiveness. Like that.
Right. Yeah. So every loss is felt heavily. I'm already outnumbered no matter what, even at full strength. So the game you and I played was a very close game.
Yeah.
Which was a super fun game of Titanicus.
Without a doubt.
Like every decision mattered. Very, very close neck and neck. We were playing the open engine war deck, and we had an expanding.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Back to hobby progress. You had said,
"Oh yeah,"
you had the cards, and I was like, "Oh man, these are like this is such a cool way to play the game." And you were like, "Oh, did you not get these?" I said, "No, I didn't get these." Oh man, I wish I had gotten these because now you can't get them. Yeah, I mean, like everything. That's Titanic.
They were out of stock for like 2 years, and then they came back for a week, month,
maybe. Yeah. And so then I went by our GW store to pick up The End in the Death Part 2, the special edition that had been shipped there. And the guy goes, "Oh, you've got two things here." And I go, "Oh, I do." And then he goes, "Oh, yeah. And it was those cards I had bought. And I forgot that I bought them while we were recording. And they sat there for like 2 months. Yeah. And I was like, "But I've been here within 2 months. Why didn't you?" But whatever.
Up an online order.
I got them, so I was super excited about that.
You've got your set.
Okay. Anyway, so that's what we played.
Yeah. So we had one central objective, and we also had this expanding conflagration of. It made it really hard to vent plasma, which meant reactor management became a very big deal. And by the end of the game, I think it covered almost the entirety of the table.
It was a circle around the central objective that continued to get larger,
would grow every round. Yeah.
And it was like a firestorm, and so it was very hard to cool off the Titans.
Right. Yeah. So reactor management.
That was so cool.
It's actually. And the open engine war, I really like. It's just a couple little levers of what they do. Like, I don't remember what the planetary effect we had was now.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it was something, but it was something like every time you fired a weapon the first time, you had to roll to see if you got hit by. And I don't remember if it was a lightning strike now or
no, it wasn't a lightning strike. It was there was something on the ground causing some problems. Anyway, the first time you fired the weapon in a round, it could cause you some
there was
damage.
A chance you were going to take some hits for it,
right?
Which it changes how you think about your activations, and like what order you're going to do things in, and an extra layer of tracking something. But when
it never really came into play. That one,
I think it hit once or twice, and it wasn't a big deal when it actually did. But anyways, it was super fun game, very close.
So my list contains my list is actually, for the first time ever, fairly well balanced.
Yeah, it's very balanced.
And I couldn't tell you the mana pool it is off the top of my head, but
it's the same starting mana pool.
I have two Warlord Titans. One is rocking 2 volcano cannons. The other one has
Double plasma.
Sun Fury plasma cannons on them, which is just super fun. I mean, they're super big. He needs to get in a little bit closer, the Sun Fury plasma guy.
Yeah.
I generally use the stratagem that allows me to put out a plant that I can a reactor plant that I can
plasma generator.
The plasma generator I can cool off my volcano cannon guy a bit. Then I have a Reaver Titan, which I'm super in love with this particular guy, who's rocking the like 2 Gatling cannons and the missile launcher on his carapace. So he can strip shields like nobody's business.
Make shields go bye-bye.
And then I have 2 Warhound Titans, both equipped with plasma cannons and the Vulcan Megabolters. And then I have the 2 Knights with the shields and lances. And so, I mean, in combination, like I'm stripping shields and then just, the volcano cannons just do a ton of work.
Get some work done. Plasma's really good for finishing off hurt Titans.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So it just interesting. It provides, I think, a bunch of different threats, as I found out in your game and in my subsequent game. And it's fun to play, and I think fun to play against. So,
absolutely, yeah. You've got speed, you've got mobility, you've got firepower, you've got some high strength random template stuff, but then also some really good quality of fire to get some kills done.
So I had a lot of fun with it. Our game, it's always fun playing games with you, Josh. And I mean, I say that to a lot of people that have been on the show, but you and I have had some games that are just super memorable that we talk about a lot, and this is one of those games that I felt like, a lot happened in this that was super fun.
Super close game. It definitely could have gone either way. And it was, I actually made notes, which I don't have in these notes, unfortunately.
Of course.
But because this is a little while ago now. Like it came down to the final turn of like trying to get a position. And I think I ended up just being shy of a failed order charge or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. So I actually rocked the victory, which I was super excited about.
Carl's on a winning streak.
We'll talk about that too. But yeah. And so I played that. Campos and Cheyenne, 2 of our friends from Southern California that frequently join us for our Geekends. They came up just to play board games and such. Cheyenne wanted to play a game of 40K. So I played a Tzeentch Demon list against Cheyenne's Blood Angels. He crushed me. He crushed me. I mean, I punched him in the face a lot and did some damage, but he did a really good job of, one of the things I rely on in that list in particular is the toughness of my Lord of Change and of Karos Fate Weaver.
Sure.
I mean, they have like a toughness of 10
or 12.
I think it's 10.
Up there. Yeah.
And so a lot of things that are trying to hit him or either of them, okay, you're wounding on 6s. I think it's even a 12. I want to say it's a 12. I have to go back and look. What I know is I can typically depend on that toughness. Cheyenne is really good at, first off, he's a really good player, but second off, he's really good at throwing out various stratagems that are like, okay, I wound on 5s and 6s, as opposed to just, it gives me a +1 to the wound. Not necessarily the strength, but to the wound. So all of a sudden, these things where I'm like, yeah, well, you're counting on 6s. Now he's like, well, now I'm counting on 5s and 6s. And by the way, I get rerolls on this or rerolls on 1s on that. I'm like, oh my God. So he kind of tore down my Lord of Change and then my my Karos Fate Weaver pretty quickly. What's his name? I had like 4 characters in this army. 2 of them are that. I had a Demon Prince, and then I had the Changeling. Okay, if somebody knows how to use the Changeling, please let me know, because when I look at his rules and what he does, I'm like, this is fairly worthless. Like he is, and which sucks because he's such a cool model.
Yeah.
And he is painted by Dave Paints so well. Like he looks so freaking cool. Worthless.
Just a paperweight on the table, though. Yeah.
Worthless.
That's unfortunate.
So I have a few changes I'm going to make to that list. Some of the list also was, I realized, well, here's like all the units I really have. Like I was kind of deficient in some areas. I need to add like maybe Exalted Flamer or something. Yeah. I had Flamers in the list. I had Screamers in the list. I don't own as many Screamers as I thought I owned, so I may need to paint up 3 more. and I had like 4 squads of pink horrors, which are great.
It's a lot of bodies. They're very durable.
Probably too many in the troop section there on the pink horrors. So,
they're good at holding objectives, but don't have a lot of killing power in return.
Was a super fun game. I did kill a lot of stuff. I killed, Dante or whoever, like, all right. At a certain point, you're like, okay, I'm losing. Yeah. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to kill that dude. Yeah. And I'm going to kill that dude before the end of this game. And so I did. And I felt, okay, look, I just go back to the warp and come back. He's dead.
Yeah, exactly.
It was a great game, though. It was a lot of fun. We were laughing and having fun over there. And I learned some interesting things. In particular, I have this really cool stratagem I can use specific to Zeech demons or demons in general, where I can spend, I can't remember the number. I spend the points or whatever, and I can shift units I can pick them up at the end of my opponent's turn. Yeah. And then place them back down in my...
they go back into strategic reserves.
Yeah, they go back into strategic reserves, and then I can basically re-deep strike them in my movement phase. Yeah. So I can... And if it's in your zone of chaos or area of chaos, whatever it's called, I can actually do it with, I think, 2 or 3 units. If it's outside, I can just do it with 1. But, man, being able to shift suddenly 3 units... Yeah. And it doesn't say... Unless I'm mistaken, it doesn't say anywhere you can't pull them out of combat.
Right.
So if they're in combat and all of a sudden, whoop,
that's a big deal.
They're gone and I move them. Yeah. Holy smokes.
For objective game too. You're not going to score because objectives you're not going to score in your command phase, which you're going to deploy afterwards, but then you're setting up for your next turn.
But you could get units potentially out of trouble. You could
get kill box set up
and reposition. Yeah, there was a lot of potential.
Yeah, that seems pretty clutch.
So I got to study that a little bit more before I go back up to Vancouver and play on tabletop. Play on tabletops. We're going to talk to them next episode, but they just dropped publicly the game I played up there, Thousand Suns versus Nick's Imperial Guard. And so you can go see it now. And it was a freaking great experience.
Yeah, it's really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more next episode. But yeah, so I got a game of 40K in, I got a game of Titanicus in, and then, I got another game of Titanicus in that we'll talk about in a bit. Up at the G3 group. Other than that, what did you play?
I did get an additional game of Titanicus. This was after the
number
event.
82.
I've lost track, but yeah, probably. This was post event, and Sky definitely had some FOMO about seeing all the photos that we posted from the event. Yeah, just a bit, and has for a little while with Titanicus and upcoming Legions Imperialis also. Just really wanting to get into the game and the scale and things like that. Yeah. So he has played, I think 3 or 4 games or so. So this wasn't his first game, but we did a very small scale, just kind of refresher game. So. Right. We played all using my models because I have a ton of stuff, so I was able to set up a pretty close mirror match where we did 2 Reavers and then 2 Warhounds. A Reaver and 2 Warhounds each.
Got it.
So it was a pretty small scale game. That's roughly 1,000 points. Yeah. At that size, which is a smaller game for a Titanicus, but just kind of refreshed, going through the mechanics, things like that.
It's an interesting game in the sense that, like, every time I go back and play it, I'm like, oh, that's right. Okay, here we go. Yeah. And you're playing through the rounds, but there's a lot of
granularity.
Little granularity things that like you don't remember.
When you only have a handful. Oh yeah. I at least
you do. I don't.
I have the reps in, but also just the way my brain remembers rules. Like I'm pretty dialed in and have been early on. Yeah. This was a super fun game. There was a ton of just fun interactions. We both just kind of went for it in certain ways. Sure. It's very tactical. Positioning really mattered in this game.
Positioning matters in Titanicus. Most games are won in the movement phase.
Yep. So this was a similar mission in that we just had one single objective in the middle, and it's really whoever at the end of the game has the most scale worth of Titans on that objective at the end of the game is going to grab it. And there was only 2 Titans left on the board at the end. We had two Warhounds were left. and I attempted to do a full stride order.
Oh, so you had one and he had one.
We each had a Warhound, yeah. So we had each lost a Reaver and a Warhound going into the final turn. Full
stride.
I was in position to full stride to get within objective range. Sky was already pretty close to the objective, so he could very easily get there. He might have already been on it. He did reposition a little bit. But full stride order, failed the command check so I passed. Sorry, I got the full stride.
Okay.
But
and for those who don't know, you get to the order phase where you decide, okay, this Titan's going to do this, and you make a command check. As soon as you fail a command check, you can't issue orders to any more Titans. So picking the order in which, in this case, it doesn't matter, but in a general game, picking the order in which you're going to assign, you want to make sure you're picking the orders for the right guys, because as soon as you fail, you're done.
Sky attempted 3 times to do an emergency repair on his Reaver and failed the command check every time, which is a 4+ on a D10.
Yeah.
So not like a hard check to make, but so he kept ending his orders, and obviously his Reaver did not survive the match because he couldn't get that roll off.
Right.
So I was actually misremembering there. So it was not a full stride order. I needed to boost my reactor so I could get onto the objective, but
which would increase your movement.
It increases my movement to up to 12 inches on a Warhound.
Right.
And when I rolled the boost, I got Machine Spirit, which I failed the command check of. So Machine Spirit took over. So instead of moving onto the objective and at least tying the game, if not potentially winning,
you randomly determined.
I randomly shot with one of my weapons instead.
Good
because
job.
The Machine Spirit takes over, and I'm just completely out of position with that, which is just a super fun conclusion to the game.
That's great.
And he was able to arc dodge my front shot because I wasn't able to move there. So he was able to just positionally secure victory there. Yeah.
You're on a losing streak.
Super fun game though. Yeah.
I'm on a winning streak.
Hey, my dice showed up, and it was a super fun game. So that's a win in my book.
All right. I'll take it. Okay. So I mean, actually significant amount of hobby progress on both our parts, a significant amount of games played. I feel like it's a solid couple weeks, man.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's do this. Let's take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to spend the next half hour or so talking about this event we went to, because I think, and then after that, we'll have Killian come on and talk about organizing the event, what it was like,
some of the inspiration, logistics,
etc. Yeah. So, and bear with our audio with Killian. It's a little rough around the edges. He didn't have a direct mic he could use. But I think it's an interesting discussion. I think it's worth airing. Yeah. So we'll be right back, and we're going to talk about the Adeptus Titanicus Maximus.
Extremis
Maximus.
The immolation of Califax.
There you go. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. We're talking Adeptus Titanicus Maximus, Extremis Explosivus.
Exterminatus?
So, months ago,
yeah.
Now, you have been to one of these events before, run by these guys.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that event before we get into this event. What's going on?
I've known these guys for 10 years or so now, just through...
I met them through
friends of them that have moved to Santa Cruz from their original gaming group. They're all up in Chico, which is Northern California here. So it's about 3.5, 4 hours away from where we are.
Middle of nowhere, but beautiful.
Kind of middle of nowhere. Absolutely
the trees
beautiful.
were gorgeous.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I haven't seen fall like that in my life.
You have to understand, we don't know. We get rid of 2 seasons.
I live 5 minutes away from the ocean. It doesn't change.
That's right.
Yeah. So I've known these guys for a good while. Really good group of guys. Always have been into narrative play, cinematic games, like beautiful presentations of miniatures, terrain, etc.
Telling a story.
Yeah. And having a continuation of that story. Like each event kind of builds upon the story of the previous events or the previous game days that they've put together. Because they're doing kind of little small iterations in between the major events. They're doing like one major event a year and then maybe 1 or 2 small kind of game days that are contributing towards that story in between, more for the local crew versus the kind of big event of it. So last year I went to the event there, and it was in a similar
this
scale.
is up in Chico.
Up in Chico again. Yeah. This was a slightly smaller event, and we had about 12 people playing.
Okay.
A very amazing terrain. Also, a lot of grimdark terrain was present for their gorgeous armies. This one had a cool kind of narrative aspect in that the city was too cramped for small titans to get into. So this was really kind of the big machines were coming out to play here. So most tables had a War Master on it, which is the biggest scale Titan that there is in the game right now, whether it was an Iconoclast or just the more shooty oriented of the War Master Titan. And everything had to be a Nemesis Warbringer or larger scale. Okay. So no Reavers, no Warhounds, no Knights. So it's really only the big stuff. And that was just a cool kind of narrative angle to take for this, for the first game of last year. And then the second game of that was the complete opposite. So this was representing under the main like city. So this is like the sub layers and sewers and things like that. Was Knights only. So it was a game that was only Knights,
interesting.
And Knights were running around in the sewer, and it's kind of almost like they were using I guess the closest equivalent now would be using the blanking on the name, of course, boarding action terrain.
Oh, yeah.
With Knights.
Oh, cool.
So it was all scaled for like Knights in tunnels, in sewers, and things like
that.
That's
pretty cool.
Just super thematic idea for what to do. And then some just fun pickup games after that.
Okay.
Which was a super fun event. Went up there, played 3 games, had a great time. Me and Brian carpooled up there last year.
That's right.
Had an absolute blast. Yeah. And just a great group of guys up there, beautiful armies, and super fun, just thematic events and games that they throw there. So this year's was kind of the next evolution of that in both story and presence for the event itself.
Yeah. Now you had to kind of cajole me and remind me and push me to go to this thing. I have not been into Titanicus as much as you have. I mean, I played it. I have a force. I paid to have Austin paint it, for the most part. I did the Knights. But I wasn't particularly fired up about driving 4 hours to go through an event. And I was like, okay. But then as they were releasing more of the pictures of the stuff they were working on, I was like, oh, this is going to look pretty cool. And you kept going, hey, are you going? Make sure you remind them. So finally I commit to going. Somebody recently, I heard somebody talking about agreeing to do things, and don't agree to do something unless you would be willing to do it the next day. Like if somebody's asking you, hey, do you want to go to this thing? Imagine they're asking you, do you want to go to this thing tomorrow? And then you're like, do I really want to be there tomorrow? Right. Like, yeah. And so I was kind of on the fence about this, but I'm glad you pushed me to go. It was the same way when we went up to Santa Cruz, and Jeff pushed me to go up to Santa Cruz, and that was not where I met you, but you were there, Jody, Scott, all those guys.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad I went, because it got me super fired up about this. And like I'll say later, if I hadn't gone, I'd be kicking myself right now. So I'm really glad I did. I need to be more aware and open of that kind of thing. But it is a 4-hour drive from here.
Yep.
We go up there. Brian was going to ride with us, but life always happens with Brian. The life of Brian.
I know.
And
wanted that so many times to him.
And so Brian goes up separately, sucker, because we had to leave by like noon.
Yeah.
If we weren't going to get stuck in some bad traffic.
3-day holiday weekend, so traffic was
Brian
be
left around 3.
Yeah.
That he missed the window. We got the window. We were right through.
We threaded the needle.
But he spent forever getting up there.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is, I'm glad I went. And I'm glad you pushed me to go up there. And I'm glad I prepped to go up there too. I was also, for lack of a better term, not confident in my ability within the rules and how to play the game. So I was like, for one of the few times, like, I see where Shell is coming from. When we do a game day here, and Shell's like, well, I don't want, can we play a team game and you're with me so that I'm helping her along? She doesn't have such a strong grasp of the rules that she wants to hold people up or make dumb moves because she doesn't understand.
And none of us would feel that way.
No, none of us would feel that way, but this group didn't feel that way either. Right. And in fact, when we talk to Killian later, we talk about some of the reasons people were paired together, and it worked out really well in our favor. So we prepped, we played our prep game that we talked about before. We pack everything up. You come down here. We head up there. We avoid most of the traffic, but it's enjoyable. I like road trips with people and just chatting and killing time. And so we get up there, and there's a great game store up there. I don't remember the name of the game store.
Hero Corner?
Heroes Corner, something
Heroes
like
Corner,
that.
I think. Yeah.
And we'll find it. I'll put a link in. They had in this game store like Kickstarter stuff that would clearly been backed and then was for sale on unopened and for sale. So it was kind of interesting. Like,
great collection of board games for sale.
Yeah. And we regretted, you and I, because we didn't bring a board game up with us. There were some guys that were going to play Titanicus that night. Honestly, I could not have played in that environment. The light was too dim.
Yeah.
I would have had a miserable time.
Yeah, they Brandon hosted for people who had either
showed up early,
lived there, showed up early from out of area, whatever. They set up a kind of just a more informal game day the day ahead of the event, which I think was a really nice thing to offer there.
Absolutely.
The venue was a little dark, kind of concrete floors, and we were also just both a little fried after a 4-hour drive getting up there.
Yeah.
So we didn't partake in the gameplay there, but it was just a cool way for people to mix it up, meet each other, get a game in, and just have a casual hangout.
Yeah, so we got to meet a couple of the guys that we didn't know there, and then it's funny, you and I were kind of kicking ourselves because we were like, we should have brought a board game. And so I was like, maybe I'll buy a board game here, and we'll just play it. Yeah. And so as I looked around, I'm like, and I'm trying to be like, I will spend money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have this game. I have this game. Like, there was nothing there I wanted to really buy, and that's not.
There was expansions to games that I have that I don't have the base game with me, so we're not going to play it. So I'll wait. But,
and that's not a knock on their supply. I mean, their
that's
supply
saying
was
something about our collections.
Saying a problem with our collection. So I have all the board games I need at the moment, except for the ones I'm waiting for on Kickstarter to deliver. So anyway. We kill some time, we go get some dinner, and then we crash out for the night. And we get up the next morning. Brian arrived. We went and grabbed some food with Brian. We get up the next morning, and we were staying at the hotel where the event was.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, like, we walked down there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So they had rented a conference room from the local hotel there in Chico, and it's a pretty good sized room. As soon as you walk into the room, the train was already set up. So they have I'm trying to do the math in my head here. They have 9 games worth of terrain set up in one kind of contiguous line that really starts with kind of the center of the hive city, goes out to the starports, and then just expands all the way out to kind of the exterior mining colonies of this city that they've constructed that the battle is fighting over. Really smart layout on how they have that. Done a really good job separating each table with a physical terrain feature, so it's a very visually and physically kind of where your play space is for games. There's room for the terminals on both sides of the table for both players on each side that's visible. A lot of events will have like a little separate table for terminals because you do need the space for that. But if it's
usually behind you.
But if it's behind you or to the side, your opponent can't really see what's the status of your shields over there. And the only knock I have on the event is because there were so many of us right there, and I was in the middle of the board, is that the first turn or so, like, it was really hard to actually talk to my opponent because it was so loud. Yeah. And it was just everybody
at the end, and I didn't have that problem.
Which just everybody was excited and starting a game, and there's a lot happening. And as after our first turn or so, like, it died out as people got into the rhythms of rolling dice and things like that.
Sure.
But yeah, so there was side tables. There's tables around the periphery of the event, which were great for putting a case on, pulling Titans off, showing off your Titans as we're waiting to get table assignments and pairings and things like that.
And people did a bunch of like walking around looking at each other's Titans.
It's just cool to set stuff up and check it out.
Some of these guys
meet some people and
are painting so well.
Yeah,
like some of the Titans, some of them.
No,
yours, I've already talked about how long, but
good.
some there was a wide swath of quality of painting, but everybody's looked good.
I would say by and large the bar was set very high.
Yeah.
It's a really good looking event. The terrain was incredible. The mats were all this Mars themed mat, so this really kind of vibrant red orange of the mats, and then the terrain is this more dark gold, black, silver effect. So it really it's just really great contrast between the mats and the terrain itself.
It felt very imperial.
Yes.
It
did.
It was super. It felt grimdark. It felt. I mean, that's the name.
It's funny you mentioned grimdark because all the terrain, for the most part, was printed by or their grimdark terrain files that the crew
that's the name of the company.
Yeah.
But they nail it.
Yeah.
They nail it.
Absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of the cinematic pinnacle event just the second you walk in the door.
Yeah.
There.
And not to mention, at each player station, there's a little black box with a logo on it, right? Like a logo sticker.
Yeah. Which is the G3 logo. So that's the Gothamos Gaming Group. 3 Gs, G3.
And once we got to open this thing, inside are a couple gifts, which are really, really cool. For me, the piece there is on it was you get a wooden board that's been
CNC'd.
Yeah, CNC'd, and it's perfect for Adeptus Titanicus, where there is slots for each of your deviation die, your hit location die, and your
reactor
dice.
Yep.
And then there's a spot specifically for your regular dice, for all of your little...
It's your D10, your regular D6.
Tokens that can sit in the thing. Yep. And then your round coin that they have given you.
That coin is next level, too. Sick. On one side, it's the Opus Titanicus, which is what you use in the game to determine or just designate who's first player, who's second player of each round. And then on the back side of that, it's the G3 logo again. And this is a metal coin that they've actually laser cut, polished.
It's actually... it's not.
It's cast
metal. It's cast and then covered with a metal covering. I asked them how they did, and I didn't understand. I was like, okay, it's metal. It's metal because it feels metal.
Yeah, it does.
It is. Frick! They went all out for this, and I was like, they're not.
They're not charging for this event.
We didn't get charged for this.
It's such an.
I would have paid money. For this.
100%. Yeah,
and they should. Honestly, charge for it. They shouldn't foot that bill.
Yeah. In future, they might because they had to pay for the hotel room. Plus, there's the CNC.
You got a 3D printed weapon, Titan weapon.
For
plasma
blast gun for I believe it's for a Reaver loadout, which isn't a legal game loadout because there's no card for it. But absolutely, it's super fun. Yeah, and
cool.
And it's great. And the fun little tidbit of that is the original Adeptus Titanicus had that weapon available for Reaver Carapace.
Oh, that's
a little tie-in.
That's interesting.
Thematically to the original game, even though the modern game doesn't.
And then a couple stickers for the Gothamos Gaming Group stickers and stuff. I mean, it was nice. It's nice, and I slapped those on my tableware case.
You gotta.
I mean. It was next level.
Yeah.
It was next level.
And just walk in that door and the presentation immediately.
People immediately start taking pictures. Okay. They're like, okay. I was so happy. Can I tell you? I was so happy I had Austin paint my Titans.
Yeah.
Walking into that and then knowing I am going to put on the table Titans that complement and match the quality of what is going on here. I'm really glad I paid to have those commission painted.
Yeah.
And thank you, Austin, for doing a great job.
Austin does a great job with Titans.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. So, so, I mean, going in, seeing everything, Anthony, we all get organized. Anthony, Killian comes in, gives a speech about, here's why I've organized this. Here's the feel I'm going for.
Right. Yeah.
Look, important. Only politics in this room are loyalist versus traitor and Horus versus the emperor. Let's keep focused on that. Let's move forward and have a good game. We'll have Killian talk a little bit later about that. But then they start announcing pairings.
Yeah.
And the first pairing he says is Carl and Josh. And I thought, oh, Josh and I are playing a team version because as we talked about, at one end of each table, there's a 4x6 section, and then the tables go 4x4x4x4.
Yeah.
It's all one long contiguous table again. Yeah. Lo and behold, it is not Josh, SC Josh, as they called you.
Yeah.
Josh Sawyer. It's
Josh Check.
Josh Check.
Yeah.
Who I did not know until this. What a great guy.
Yeah. Super good
guy. A great guy. And I'm playing against Josh Check. And we have two very thematically balanced lists against each other.
Yeah.
And you know, we go, okay, you know, we introduce ourselves. Oh, here's what I'm playing and blah, blah, blah. And we're just chatting and everybody's gets their announcements. Who are you playing?
I'm playing against Brandon, who is the guy who did most of the 3D printing for
most
the
of the printing.
Yeah, and I had met him last year at last year's event. We didn't get to play a game last year.
Right.
He
seemed really nice.
Super nice guy. Very
smart.
Played a lot of games.
Like super smart. Like to be able to manipulate the files he's done. And he's clearly...
He has something. I don't remember how many printers he has, but he said something. I think he has like 12 printers.
Oh my God.
He's his own little farm there.
Oh my God.
He's into it. He knows what he's doing, and he did a great job.
So you're set up against him. Everybody pairs off down the tables, and you know let's talk a little bit about your game. I'll talk a little bit about my game.
Sure. Yeah. So just starting with the table assignments, I was put on the table that had the spaceships on it, which these are Battlefleet Gothic styled cruisers that are landed. They're kind of in dry dock on table here.
Yeah. The
table itself is amazing. There's a little loader model that's actually loading up in scale kind of Titanicus crates. Had an absolute blast of a game, and I've never lost a game so hard in Titanicus.
What happened? What went wrong?
Yeah, so I had that kind of list we were talking about. It's the same list that I played with you in our just kind of practice game there. A couple things happened. First one is my dice absolutely did not show up at all. I don't think I made a single void shield save the entire game.
You said that.
Which makes it harder for Titans to survive.
Yes,
Brandon played a very smart game. He was definitely able to capitalize on me having fewer activations and less mobility to really kind of position what he needed to. The terrain of this table, while it was absolutely amazing and so thematic, didn't really work for the list that I needed because there was kind of this really large line of sight blocking piece of terrain right in my deployment zone, which prevented me from moving around it. But I needed the cover, but then I was kind of pinned in by the mobility, lack of mobility and line of sight of some things. Brandon did have an Acastus Knight, which are the Profirans, which are the one unit in the entire game that is not balanced.
Everybody kind of talks about this, how they're broken. I have a box of two of them. Yeah. And I have not assembled it.
Austin Lynn, we played a team game with you guys here, and he and I were the only ones who had them. So we're like, we'll face them off against each other. We'll see how it goes. And after that game, we're like, okay, they're broken. Like, wow, we're not going to use them.
That's interesting that's like the one.
Yeah.
And everybody in the community agrees. Yeah, like these things
it's the
are
one miss
ridiculous.
Of the game.
Yeah.
And there's such a cool model. And
maybe they get adjusted.
Brandon actually had a really good idea for a house rule that I would definitely implement to make them more fair in person. So that was the one thing on his list that is like, okay, he is like this one thing that's a bit overpowered at the moment. The rest of his list was super fun and easy, but he did first fire on that. So this is turn one. I haven't even moved yet because he got. I didn't get priority a single turn of the game either.
How's it feel, Josh? How does it feel? Welcome to my party.
Sometimes it's great, but when you only have 4 models, it's not the best.
Right.
Although, yeah, because I need to get those shots off when I need them. Although being able to position and maneuver off of one of his. He had, 8 things on the board to my 4, so he was just running circles around me as far as activations and maneuverability. But very first thing he did, first fire with a Profirin and hit me, 5 times on my Corrupted Reaver, who's incredibly melee oriented. Just wants to run forward, get into the fight.
And as we mentioned, you failed
all the void shield saves. So he loses shields before he's even moved.
Oh my god!
And that's pretty much how the game went for me. Still super fun. Like I've never had this much fun getting my butt handed to me.
Yeah.
Again, because it's Titanicus. Just a really fun game, fun matchup, fun mission too. Because this one was mission scenario. The scenario was objective based. So
yes.
Positioning mattered. Unfortunately, I died too soon for it to actually matter.
Yeah.
But I would like happily play that mission again.
It was funny. I looked over and I see like at the lunch break and I see like all 4 of your Titans in the corner. And I'm like, Josh has weird positioning on his Titans.
That was the end of the game. Brandon and I have both played a lot of games. He was, not far behind me in the game count. I don't know where he is, but he's played a lot of games. It had been a couple months since he'd played a game before. So there's just a couple, like the first turn or two, there's just a couple little like catch up things. But after that, like we played our game. It was a full game. I only had 4 Titans. So my turns were very quick. My actions were quick. And then I just got my butt kicked. So we were done by 12:30. So that was a quick game. I was starting at 10:30.
Josh Check and I set up and as you mentioned, the objectives get placed on the table with 2 objectives being primary objectives.
Yes.
They get designated as primary objectives. They're worth a few more points. Vital objectives. They're worth more points. It was an interesting way of deploying objectives. It was very cool, reminiscent of kind of 5th edition 40K. So we set up the objectives. His list was in some ways almost a mirror of mine. A Reaver, 2 Warlords, if I remember correctly, 2 Warhounds, and 2 Knights.
He had a Nemesis. He did have a Warbringer instead. I think he probably had 1 Warlord and 1 Warbringer.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I take that back. So 1 Warlord, 1 Warbringer. The Reaver was set up for close combat, carrying like a Melta, and he had like modeled like this orc, ball and chain thing on it that it was going to swing. A
flail.
It was pretty cool. So I didn't want that thing getting in close combat with me because I was kind of anytime I see a close combat weapon on a Titan, I go, oh man, if that thing hits, it's going to be brutal. So I actually won to go first, but then gave that up because I used this great stratagem for 2 points, which basically let me take an entire move.
Oh yeah,
this is
one of your legion
specific to my legion.
Legio, sorry.
Yep, and so I decided to forego going first to reposition a bunch of Titans and move them, which worked out really well. He ended up coming up my left flank with his 2 Warhounds and his 2 Knights, which I kind of ignored to my detriment a little bit, but I kind of knew, like I know what those Knights do once they get in close combat. And I was like, I'll deal with those after I deal with these super heavies over here. And I ended up, what was the other Titan, not the Warlord, the
Warbringer.
The Warbringer. Initially, I stripped a bunch of shields off the Warbringer, but then I ended up changing my target from the Warbringer to the Warlord, and ended up eventually taking out the Warlord. I think I got the first engine kill of the whole event. Actually,
you were the first one to yell at it.
I was the first one to yell.
I had probably already lost 2 Titans at that point.
Oh yeah, your guy didn't yell engine kill.
He didn't yell engine kill.
He's the kind of orc player that doesn't yell WOG either. But anyway,
some people.
I was the first one to yell engine kill. So I take that out. Where you were. I think I got all your fails, like all your success came over to me.
Perfect. I'm glad somebody got it.
I was making shield saves like nobody's business at one point. Yeah. And in particular, as the game progressed and we're starting to lose Titans across the board, I have 2 Warhounds. He has 2 Warhounds. I still have significant. I think my Reaver was still on the table. His Warbringer was still there. Like I kind of ignored it. I kind of neutered it a little bit and then just kind of ignored it.
They're good utility Titans, but they're not good at actually killing other Titans.
Yeah, and he was far off in a corner, so he wasn't really effective. I was able to get behind terrain where he couldn't really. He
wasn't on an objective or anything. So.
Yeah, and so it comes down to kind of his Knights that I end up finally. I think I finally destroyed his knights, and it comes down to I have a warhound, and I think my reaver left, and he has a warhound. But this one warhound I had could just not be destroyed. Just kept shrugging off.
That was your goodest of boys?
He was the goodest of boys. Yeah. And he shrugged off every shield. Like there's a picture where I have like straight sixes. It's just like, make them all. And he's just like, God dang it. And so, and even when I started taking damage, it was like he would not roll necessarily good damage, or I would just, be able to withstand that. Finally, what ended up destroying that warhound, he destroyed himself. He overheated as I ran him hot to try to, spin him around so that I didn't have my back to this guy and I could at least get a shot off. And he just detonated.
I'll interject real quick on my game with Sky. We both did self-kill warhounds by running our reactors.
They get hot real fast.
The reactor's so small, but it's still fun and satisfying.
So, and I had when Titans detonated, they 13 inches out and, magazine detonations that would cause damage to other Titans. And that's the best part of the game.
Yeah. That cascade effect, the potential for it.
In the end, I won by 1 point because I was close to a vital objective. And he had moved off one objective to get a shot and was just out of reach of the objective.
Yeah.
And so I won by a point at the end of it. But I kid you not, I think at the end of the game, we had 2 or 3 Titans on the board.
Yeah.
Like it was just super knockdown slugfest. And it was so fun. And
I'll say because my game ended so early, I was able to watch like the second half of your game. And usually Titanicus isn't a fun game for me to watch because there's so much resource management and moving.
Right.
And if you don't have any agency of how that's playing out, it's
kind of dull.
Engaging to watch.
Yeah.
But that was such a close game. You guys are both having so much fun. Like that was the most fun I've ever had watching a game.
Yeah, we were laughing about it and just like as I would make these shield saves and stuff on the warhound, he's just like, I cannot believe this thing is still standing there. I'm like, very loyal warhound.
Sometimes the dice are with you.
You call him a traitor, but he's really loyal. Man, Josh Check was such a fun opponent and knew more about the game than I did, but was willing to help me out. Hey, don't forget you have these close combat weapons on I can't remember what on the Warlord.
Ardex Defensor.
The defense cannons or defense guns or whatever they are. Like I completely forgot about those. And he's like, don't forget you have to shoot those at the knights. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. So what a great experience. And to be playing on that terrain just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Man. It was so good.
Absolutely gorgeous.
My one criticism of the terrain, and this is such a nitpicky kind of whiny thing, is most of the games I see of Titanicus are a map and then the terrain. And it's like, it doesn't feel like, and some of that's for mechanical purposes, but it doesn't feel like a natural kind of like evolution to the terrain. Buildings don't sit in the middle of the street.
Right.
Yeah. Buildings have sidewalks around them and maybe trees and that kind of thing. And so I think to take that to the next level, to make it look even more natural. And we used to see the guys from the Fault Line group do this. Like they'd use moss and stuff around.
Yeah.
Maybe throw a little rubble out there. Like the Titanicus games should get to that look eventually. And I think these guys will.
Yeah.
Like I think they're fully aware of that. But listen, I mean, I shouldn't complain at all because and that's not a complaint. That's like this is how it goes to the next level of modeling.
And Killian did mention that for future plans, they actually do tend to introduce more levels and things like that.
Without a doubt.
More integration.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. Which will be incredible.
I can't even imagine.
For Legions Imperialis, they are actually coming out with like city street tiles for the millimeter scale.
I saw them. Listen, I priced them.
If they're that hollow plastic, like I'm curious how they are for like the roll. Like I just don't like the sound of dice on that. But if you get a dice tray on the side,
I have the feeling they are very much like the ones
secret
for
weapon.
No. Well, yes,
and
but
Necromunda tiles.
The
also.
Necromunda tiles.
Or
I imagine they're
Realm
very
of
much
Battle board kind of.
Yeah.
But smaller, obviously.
I think they're more like the Necromunda tiles.
Yeah.
And they have them in that. You can see the pictures of them in the.
Which they look great.
They look amazing.
They do look amazing. I'll probably have to pick some up. Right. And that's my home terrain kit. Like I love the buildings. I think it looks great. But I also just have them kind of on this like Barrens kind of wasteland mat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really feel like a city. So there's a little bit of disconnect from my mat and terrain also. So I've been thinking of ways to integrate that more. And I think Legions Imperialis will definitely make me think more thematically, like, oh, what if we have street tiles here and the buildings are arranged there? Or we're like, oh, there's an airstrip here. I've actually got some Imperial planes from Aeronautica. Like, let's set that
that's
up.
a very good
little
point.
Depot and actually just build more thematic tiles that way.
Leaving this event.
Yeah.
So okay, those were our games at the event. We only played one game each. And then we called it. My game lasted till, I don't know, 3 p.m. Yeah, yours was over by 12:30.
A couple hours longer, but then I was taking pictures of the event, looking at everybody else's games, and
talking,
talking, hanging out, and like had a great time.
So having gone to the event, like I came back from it as you were just talking about. Oh, this terrain and blah blah blah. Like I came back super jazzed about it and super excited to. Okay, what can I do next for Titanicus, right? Which is how I then fell down the Legions Imperialis freaking hole.
That's next.
I'm so mad at you. I can't even tell you how mad at you I am about this stupid Legions Imperialis. But
next episode, Josh will not be a co-host on the show.
Never. But I mean, I came away from it going, I want to play more of this game. I really, really enjoyed myself. Again, and I think I'll say later too when we're talking with Killian, is a lot of times we get questions from people who say, "Oh, should I get into Adeptus Titanicus?" And I'll say, "Yes." However, is there anybody in your area that is playing this or interested in playing this? Do you have
at least one friend?
You got to have somebody else that's interested, because if you get into it, like, you're not going to just pull people in unless they play it. Even because watching it.
Caveat though, even if you don't have anybody locally, like this is a game worth playing. It's such a good game. I love this game. I can't state that enough. And there's definitely some bias there, so take that with a grain of salt. But even if I didn't have anyone to play this locally, like just because the game's so good, the Titans themselves are so beautiful,
you would go.
If I only went to Adepticon to play Titanicus, I think it's still worth it for me at that point.
I think I'd have to play it more than just at Adepticon to be involved in it. Now, that being said,
I obviously do 82 whatever games in, but
it's crazy.
But yeah, it's that good of a game that
it is
for me. I think it would still be worth it at that.
And its rule set is really tight. I mean, and I think I said when we initially covered this, like, reading the rules for me was stereo instructions. But once you realize, oh wait, okay, there's these terminals. Like, I wasn't thinking about the terminal aspect of it. There's these terminals that sit by the side. And if you've ever played a GW game, the minute you start playing this and you get through a round, you're like, got it.
You got a terminal, you got a quick reference sheet, and between that, you're maybe looking up one rule a game.
Yeah. Well,
or asking
you
me.
are.
I'm looking up one rule a game
a bunch,
because it's one thing that happens rarely that I always forget how it works.
But it's a game that once you're playing it, like, okay, and there's, like I said, there's a few little rules here and there that are the defense guns and stuff, like, oh yeah, I forgot all about those.
Right,
or by the way, having your side or rear to an opponent does,
you get that
block.
Penetration
bonus, it's like, oh yeah, okay.
There's a lot of granularity in the game, like hands down, and
facing is incredibly important.
Yep.
For those people who are missing facing from like 40K, like, this is more important.
Yeah.
Facing here is more important than it ever was in 40K.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
Because your maneuvering arcs matter, your line of sight matters, you're actually measuring line of sight from each individual weapon system.
And the alternating activation makes movement.
You're engaged the entire time, and there's just that tactical kind of back and forth the entire game.
The entire game. And this was something that Josh Check said to me at one point, like, we're two rounds into the game, and I go, he goes, boy, I'm really nervous about, like, the next round. Like, I feel like I'm sitting in a bad spot. And I'm like,
I am too.
I feel like I'm sitting in a bad spot. That's a sign of a really good game.
Yeah.
like whenever you feel like, oh, I'm off, but your opponent also feels
that
like
knife's
they're
edge. It could really go either way the entire game.
Yeah. And it was so close.
Yeah.
What a great experience. Thank you for pushing me to go to this thing. I'm serious. Like, thank you for pushing me to go to it.
I will happily push people to play Titanicus every opportunity I can.
Well, I will definitely want to play more Titanicus.
And Legions Imperialis is right behind that, so.
I will definitely want to play more Titanicus.
Yeah.
Because I'm already looking at those stupid Legions Imperialis tanks and guys, and I'm like, you could paint those up so fast.
Yep.
Like, this is going to take nothing.
That scale, and the little guys, they're just little guys, man. It's easy.
I know.
Yeah. And it's fun. For me, I have a ton of nostalgia for that scale from Titan Legions, Adeptus Titanicus.
And I'm going to bet they have streamlined these rules to work really well.
Yeah. Yeah. I did watch the video battle report.
I have not yet.
Which looks very fun, streamlined, and that was a smaller scale game than a full scale game, but it still looked like a blast. So.
You know, I mean, it's very... I can't speak highly enough about Titanicus, but I think the way they're going with the Legions Imperialis thing is akin to when we covered Battlefleet Gothic a long time ago, and when I hear people talk about Battlefleet Gothic at this point, and they're like, oh, it's such a great game. I'm like, is it? Is it?
It's a fun game. It's not a great game.
It is. It is.
I love it. But
yes.
It's clunky.
As we say, yes, and
yes.
rules have progressed since then.
Yeah.
Like, there are better space fighting fleet engagement games than Gothic.
No argument there.
And I want to like it more than I do, but I don't. And I have a lot of Gothic stuff. Like, I have an entire Minotaur's Space Marine fleet.
Yeah, nice.
I have an entire Chaos fleet. I have an entire Imperial fleet.
I got a huge Eldar fleet.
I have, man, you and your... Dude, when we were playing Battlefleet Gothic and Steve was breaking out his Eldar, and I'm like, okay, so this is how missiles work. He's like, no. Not me. This is how shooting works. Not me.
No.
This is how shields work. Not me. I'm like, geez, you're playing a different game as the Eldar in Battlefleet Gothic.
So do Necrons.
But my point is, going back to my original point, is I expect from Legions Imperialis that those rules that were in Epic will have evolved to this point to where they are more modern, more streamlined, more balanced.
Yep.
I win they come out with Battlefleet Gothic, and I say win because I really expect that at some point they will. I would expect that those rules will change significantly as well, but it will still maintain the feel of...
And I hope they actually take some of the things they've learned out of Titanicus to Battlefleet Gothic, like use a terminal, use those kind of facings, things like that, and make it work that way.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. All right. Great event. I want to thank those guys up there for running it and for allowing us to attend. We had such a great time. Let's get into a conversation with Killian and see what his thoughts were around organizing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. Joining us here is Killian Volk up in Chico, and he has just thrown an incredible Adeptus Titanicus event that we're talking about some of the games we've played recently. This was definitely what I would call a kind of a pinnacle style event. So
yeah, for sure.
Welcome, Killian, and can you give us just a little intro on who you are and what your gaming chops are?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Long time miniature wargamer, former store owner, and then an event organizer. I originally started running Warhammer and Warhammer 40K events, some pocket conventions, and whatnot, and then took a little bit of a hiatus and found myself coming back to the hobby with Adeptus Titanicus.
You used to have a massive World Eaters army, correct?
Yeah.
And then you started selling
off 40,000 points being the World Eaters.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, say that number again.
40,000 points.
40,000 points of World Eaters. I remember seeing, and you had like sergeants had names, like you had the whole,
the
whole 9 yards.
Huge collection, incredible. Really well done.
And you sold. Has it all been sold off at this point?
I got to a point where I wasn't really playing. So I started selling off that collection. One of my buddies bought a bulk of it. A guy back east bought some of it. and then it kind of parsed out from there.
Got it.
It all in total, it took me about 3 years to break that collection apart. And then eventually someone asked me how much was left as a reseller, and he just bought everything I had.
Interesting.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you played 40K for years, took a hiatus, you got married, had kids, the usual, life gets in the way of our fun sometimes. But then you landed into Adeptus Titanicus. How did you land in that pool to play in? Because I wanted to toss out there, one of the things I warn people about with this game, Josh, because it's a beautiful game and everything, and people are like, should I get into it? And I said, are other people in your area interested? Because if they're not interested, don't, because there's not the number of opponents that you're going to be able to find with like 40K. So how did you end up getting stuck into this?
Well, my buddy up here in Pico, Josh, longtime friend of mine, had started posting a Reaver Titan, a Legio Tempestus Reaver Titan online. And I just thought the model was just the coolest thing I ever seen.
Yeah.
So at the same time, he was letting me know that our other buddy Kevin was in the hobby. So between the two of them behind the scenes, all of a sudden I started receiving Adeptus Titanicus books in the mail.
First it's free,
after
kid.
About a couple weeks, my wife is asking, I didn't know we were married anymore. And I'm just like, there's good stories, honey. It's my birthday.
I can see your wife now. I can see your wife now going, are we really going down this rabbit hole again?
Right. So my wife wasn't there during the gaming part.
Oh.
Because I had taken my hiatus. I met her. She was there for me selling off everything.
She didn't know.
So all she's thinking of is, so I'm not going to be able to park my car in the garage.
Okay. So these guys subversively get you into the hobby, and it's just when you thought you were out, they pull me back
drag
in.
you back in.
It's yes, I've quit heroin, and just one hit, and then that's it. You're stuck. So you start playing Adeptus Titanicus with these guys, and you have no interest in running events at this point.
No. I told them that I'm not going to run events. I'm not going to buy terrain. I'm going to get a manifold. That lasted a short period of time, and I'm like, okay, I think we'll run an event. We got to think. Where can we play at?
I have the same gene where I get I get involved in something and I'm like, it'd be great is if we had everybody come over and play. It's just kind of one of those things.
I'm all or nothing when I do things. So like for me, my Titanicus collection at this point now is I wanted to be able to field every single maniple that is an option. And I can now with the completion of that third Warlord. I can't do a full Exturgis maniple, but I can at least field it as a maniple. So yeah.
Wimp. So Anthony, at the beginning of the event, so everybody shows up. We have half an hour, 40 minutes to kind of measure our opponents.
Measure up.
Yeah. Everybody's setting up their things. It was funny. I messaged Todd and Doug Johnson from Table War, and I was like 70% of the people here are rocking Table War cases, guys. We had a chance to kind of get to meet people, and then you kind of give a briefing at the beginning saying, here's what's going on with this in this sector of space. Here's the battle that's about to take place. But you also talk about an experience you had at a game day that kind of drove the feeling you were going for. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I that really resonated with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was fortunate when I got in the hobby that I was able to go to a game early on with the store owner that me and our mutual friend Jody and Scott back in the day all kind of came up on it at the same time. And I'm there. This is in Baltimore. We're staying at the Days Inn, and I'm there for a few hours, and I start hearing this weird little buzz about, hey, if you're anybody, you're getting invited to this elite event in one of the penthouses at the Days Inn. So that was just like that whole event. All I could think about is who I got to talk to about this. So like Rick Priestley's there, Andy Chambers there. I'm just mentioning. So do you guys ever get to play? At these events, and make a long story short, that feeling, that excitement always came with me. And although I was never able to find that event to claim myself, I found myself in a position to be able to provide an event similar, within a similar feel to the gaming community in my area.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there is, and earlier, when we were talking earlier, I was using the term, it's an elitist kind of thing. That's the wrong term. I mean, that has like a negative connotation to it. This is the kind of event that you're building that drives.
It's a pinnacle event, but it's not gatekeeping.
It drives FOMO, right?
Right.
It drives fear of missing out and being involved in that event, but there's limited seats in it. So, so talk a little bit about who gets invited to this kind of event and why they get invited. There's another group of guys, the SN Battle Report guys, that do an event at Gibraltar, in the Rock of Gibraltar, right? They do an event there, and it's very limited in the number of people that can attend. They look specifically, like you have to submit your painted armies. You have to, they're very specific about what needs to be there. How did you
apply for registration?
Yeah. How did you pick who could attend this event? Like, what are the standards?
Well, fortunately for us, we got a long-standing core group that we could pull from, and that's part of the reason why these events are possible. That being said, the only thing that we require from people, in all honesty, is that you have to bring a fully painted army, and that's something that me and my gaming group have been known for years.
Yep.
I don't care what the standards of paint or level of your abilities you're at. It just has to be fully painted to the best of your ability. Right. So we have a term that, kind of own your hobby. Enjoy the game, enjoy the lore, dig your models, enjoy meeting people and playing new people and old friends. And we're lucky enough to have this environment that's kind of infectious when we put our events together. Our biggest limitation on who we cut the line on is able to come to our events and all is the space that we're able to bring or able to rent for the game. Not so much a certain type of player we're going for.
Gotcha.
We're trying to grow the hobby at the end of the day.
Right.
And one thing that's cool about our event is we have people, we will just say is at an expert level of gameplay in the hobby. And we have some people that were intermediate to novice at the hobby.
Listen, I know I was novice. It's cool. It's cool. Which leads to, first off, I applaud the non-gatekeeping approach to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that term, own your hobby.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
That's a t-shirt slogan if I ever heard one, man. Like that is rock solid. And the fact that like maybe this person can't paint as well as this person, but that's fine. They've done their best and they've brought their army, and cool. And it's a great opportunity for them to get tips and ideas on how to improve upon that.
Inspiration.
Yeah. And inspiration, because I left this super inspired.
Nice, yeah.
Super inspired.
You couldn't help it.
Super inspired to pay Austin to paint more of my models. This leads to okay, so you've got this group of people coming to some degree. You have traders versus loyalists, so that makes the division line fairly easy on who's going to play who
for the sides.
But how do you pick who plays who? Like, how do you determine the pairings? Is it just random, or did you guys give that a lot of thought, or how did that work out?
We actually gave it a lot of thought. Fortunately, in our group, we have a couple swing players that have historic legios that play on both sides of the heresy, and that's what's cool about the Horus Heresy. In any system within it, it almost feels like a historical game. So as we're pairing up the sides, if we need to switch one of our core players, or someone that may be coming that has expressed they don't mind playing either side, we will make that accommodation so the sides are as even as possible. And then after that, what we try to do is, first and foremost, we try to pair people together that may have never played before. And then we kind of try to pair people together that may be at different skill sets.
Got it.
So we have a member in our group, one of our 3D printers, Brandon, who actually request to play newer guys to help teach them in the hobby.
Oh, nice.
So then, it's all coming full circle. We're trying to grow the hobby. We're trying to bring more people into it. And anyone at any skill level in a narrative event has the ability to play in a game that they could thoroughly enjoy and take with them in future games.
What an interesting idea, Killian, because you could, now that I think about it, were I to run an event like this, it would be interesting to you designate a few people as kind of ambassadors, right? These are people who are going to take the new players, not pound them into the dirt because they're new players, but help them along, guide them a little bit, give them, the enjoyable event that they're going to have. Meanwhile, those ambassadors are drawing enjoyment from bringing new people into the hobby. I think that's a phenomenal idea.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal idea.
Yeah, in the event that I played that you guys hosted last year, I was playing against Jay, who was a pretty new player at that point. I don't know how, maybe it was his second or third game at that point, and I was 75 games in of Titanicus at that point. So that I really enjoyed seeing him watching all everything fall into place and click and things like that.
You've played so much Titanicus.
I've played a lot of Titanicus. It is my jam. I'm on the record. This is my jam. But it was a cool experience, and I think he had an absolute great game because I was able to just very casually explain all the mechanics and just keep him on point there. But I had no real skin in the game for the outcome of it. So obviously I was just I'm here and let's make the best game out of this.
Right.
And I'm happy to bring you up to speed and share my knowledge and give you tactical advice even. And
so it's been like every game you've played with me. You could say that.
I mean, but it's something, this system though, aside from, and honestly, even at Adepticon, there was moments in there I'm I thought tactically this might be the better choice for you. I'm not invested in the win. I'm invested in the experience of the game itself, and I think that is true of most Titanicus players.
If I were going to Adepticon next year, which obviously I'm not, this might be the game I brought. I'm starting to see why it appeals to you so much.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting, and and some of that may be me coming off the high of playing with the Gothamos Gaming Group guys out there, because man, I left there was so jazzed about the event and just everything around it and the people we got to meet that I was oh yeah, this is amazing. So I had such a good feeling coming off of it that I can see I have to temper that a little bit with everything else that's going on. And the absolute obliterating I took when I went up and played against the guys up in Play on Tabletop, where my dice failed me massively, but I failed myself, really. So that's such a great idea, Killian. We have these people who are just there to help coach people along.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, yeah. So you have people who haven't played each other before. You've got a couple different groups mixing in there.
Right.
You've got different experience levels. So you can either make it you have kind of one approach, right? You are one of two approaches. You either let's get similar experiences level together and just give those people, if you're in a more competitive game, that makes sense, right?
Right.
Let's put the two most experienced people together and the two least experienced people together, and they'll have pretty even games. But this
right.
It's not that kind of game, right? So having those ambassador roles, I think, is a really smart way to
and it works really well with Titanicus too. I mean, as we all know, when you're having a vehicle destroyed in Titanicus, I mean, it's almost as fun as if you destroyed the vehicle of the opponent, because of who knows what's going to happen, right? That's half the fun of the game.
You celebrate your deaths as much as your opponents.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay. So we've talked about how you paired people, who got invited, the vibe you were going for. The setup for this was a long time coming.
Yeah.
You guys had some amazing terrain. You had to print out a bunch of it. You had to paint a bunch of it. Boy, 3D printers are just coming along. Yeah. How many people were doing the 3D printing and how many people were doing the painting? And first off, so we can give credit where credit is due, what was the name of the company that most of the 3D printing was coming from?
Oh, well, most of the 3D printing was coming from one of our group members, Brandon.
Okay.
And he would do a lot of the bulk thematic terrain for this event. The table you put on Carl with those larger buildings. He was the one that would get in there and manipulate those files to give us a specific look we want.
But the files came
now,
from,
when it comes
files came from what company? What's the Grimdark?
Yeah,
Brandon doesn't have a storefront. He's someone that someone could reach out directly and say, "Hey, I would like to order these models," and he will print them for you.
Oh, okay.
He's using
now the other
the Grimdark terrain is the base of the files, right? And then he's doing some extra modifications and things like that, right? So if somebody wanted to find files for their own games, Grimdark would be kind of the base spot for that.
And what's it called?
Grimdark terrain.
Grimdark terrain.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
For
sure.
Okay. I just want to make sure they get, because they've clearly done a lot of work. But these are not files.
Yeah,
that you're like
fish.
Yeah, these are not files where you're just like, oh, print me this building. Like, you're printing pieces of the building and putting it together.
20 pieces per building.
Yeah,
right?
Holy smokes. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, Killian, but please continue. So
not a problem. So yeah, we selected the Grimdark line because we feel it gives us the aesthetic appeal we're looking for. You know, Bronco Fish does a fantastic job with it. And what's cool is he builds files that are a lot of component parts. And we take those parts and put them together to give us the type of buildings we want.
Yeah,
right.
So Brandon will go in and we'll use him to print specific types of terrain. And then Richard with RKO, which is a caster in England, he gives me the opportunity to get some serious bulk terrain. Like I'll say, hey, I would like this. What are you going to charge me for a plate to cast? And he works with us, and that's why you'll notice that we have a lot of the same types of buildings that help us fill out those massive tables to give us the theme we're looking for. And then the very specific pieces, like the starship on the spaceport table, was painted by a member of our group named Caleb. And he does some casting, and he was able to do us about 3 of those ships that really help drive home the fact that this isn't just a city table. This is a table that has a purpose, with the centerpiece being, massive starships available for people to play around.
Those looked so cool.
I was so happy to be on that table that happened to heavily feature. I don't think it worked for me well in game terms with the just terrain loadout, but it was just so cool and thematic that
But I also saw you broke out your camera and you were like, I'm taking pictures of my
stage
models
stuff next to it, and for the scale and context of that, like it was just such a cool. Honestly, if more than anything, just that hook of assaulting through a spaceport, it was like, all right, I'm in. No matter what, I'll make it happen.
and so, yeah, absolutely incredible. Now I know you did some of the painting yourself. Who else was doing the painting on this stuff, or did you do it all?
I painted all the buildings.
And was that so they all maintain the same aesthetic, or?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
We were talking, I don't remember if it was at the event or online afterwards, but you were talking about the color palette specifically. And can you give us just the quick insight of kind of the methodology of that color palette?
And you can see some of it.
Yeah, it's a real basic color palette with just a few colors. We're looking at hammered black, a dark silver, which would be akin to the old school bolt gun.
Yeah.
And then we'll pick out some light tan elements that we dry brush gold to give us kind of that brassy feel.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
It works.
But the reason why we use such a limited palette is it's our theory that we want the terrain to be the backdrop of the game that we're playing in, so people's individual models pop out.
That's right.
And really, whenever we take those pictures, feel like the centerpiece of that experience that they're involved in with another opponent.
I think you're 100% correct there. We've said that for years with 40K terrain too, right?
It's the third army.
You could spend forever detailing out something, but what you really want is just swaths to give the impression of something so that it's not overshadowing.
The broad strokes that set the scene, and having that it was one giant table of terrain, which ended up being not one game of terrain, but 9 or so games of there. But it being laid out in one really cohesive format where you have kind of the city and the ships, and you're going all the way out to like the outskirt mining stuff. It made it for an incredibly cinematic and cohesive presentation of just the table itself. But then you also have a really smart integration of how you use the terrain to actually distinguish the different battlefields in the game. So you have all your 4x4 tables are broken up by pylons or walls or things like that, which is just a really nice way of getting a clean visual break for those spaces. But also, it's very functional and incredibly gorgeous at the same time.
It did give you, so like people looked at the photos and said, oh, it's one giant game, but it wasn't. It was several games being played right next to each other. And one of the tricky things to do with Titanicus, because you have your terminals that you have to track everything on. So you have to have space for the terminals, but also space for the board. But it was really smart how you did this, Anthony, and it led to this. It's made me rethink a lot of things because it led to this story kind of unfolding where you weren't impacting the people next to you really, but it felt like it was all going on at the same time.
Yeah.
There was actually a point where Josh and I were playing, Josh Check and I were playing, and a template deviated off of his model onto the other table. And I was like, hit the guy next to you and tell him, oh, that template just landed on you. and that guy was like, okay.
Play where it lies.
we didn't, but it was still funny, because I had that feeling that you were connected to the people next to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You also set at the ends, you had 4x6 tables, whereas down the line you had 4x4s. So it just made for a really fun experience, and that offered you some flexibility. Can you talk about the 4x6s versus the 4x4s?
Yeah, that was my current partner, Kevin, who helped me produce these events and was responsible for the dice tray and the coin that was given out in the ball. He kind of came up with an idea that if we have a walk-on or cancellation, how do we absorb that?
Right.
So that's where we got the idea of, okay, the event is 4x4, but we're going to put a 4x6 at the very end. That way, if we bring in someone else, we could absorb that player and do a 2x1 or 2x2 game.
Yeah.
With keeping the game a little comfortable still, without cramming people together.
Yeah.
And it was also Kevin who came up with the concept of ensuring that we had a 4 foot by 1 foot wide area for people to put their terminals.
Yeah.
We experimented with a couple different things, dinner trays, side tables, all sorts of stuff. But that innovation by Kevin was very, very practical without overburdening the table with additional gaming accessories.
Yeah, that is one of the things that 40K doesn't suffer from that Titanicus does, which is those terminals where you're tracking, for those who don't know, where you're tracking the damage, the heat,
shields,
the shields, everything for each Titan. You have your own little cardboard thing for this, and they're, I don't know, maybe 5x8, 5x7.
Yeah, roughly
6x7, something like that.
Slightly larger.
Yeah. This is why I lose. I'm not good at judging distance, but those do tend to take up more space, and the larger the game you play, the more terminals you're going to use. So, and we were, I got to tell you, Killian, like this was such a great event, and I cannot thank you guys enough for inviting us. I'm really glad Josh here pushed me to go to this thing, and it was a bit of a drive for us to get there, but
well worth it.
If I hadn't gone and I started seeing those pictures, I would have just been like, why did I not go? So you hit it. You hit the tone you were going for right on the head, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a group effort, and it's something that we've developed over a number of years. The system works, and it helps that people are vested into the narrative. Fortunately, we have great creators like Grimdark Terrain, Frontline Gaming guys with their gaming maps. I mean, we're in a period of time when we're able to actually put on an event with gaming accessories that help us encapsulate our vision.
Yeah.
And especially with the online resources now, the people that I have fabricating some of our swag or some of the original artwork, like the Gothamos map or or things of that nature. We're just real fortunate.
Yeah. And I didn't even mention you guys were very generous, with everybody got a little, gift that had like the terminal layout for your dice and stuff, which is just
the dice organization.
It's awesome.
Seed, Opus Titanicus, like such a fun surprise, a really neat gift box, not only for its functionality, but also just such a cool.
I really felt
such
like
a cool piece to have there. Yeah.
I really felt like I was at a premiere event, man.
Yeah.
You guys really knocked it out of the park. And you were incredibly. I just want to thank you. You were incredibly generous with your time for not just this interview, but for everything you guys did to set this up. Please thank your crew for us as well. It was just an absolute blast, man.
Yeah. One quick thing to add here is can you just give us a quick synopsis of kind of the narrative leading into the event itself, and then also what you guys are doing with the book, because I think that is such a cool piece.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the cool concept?
The book that you're doing, the book of results, and how that's the kind of the living legend.
Yeah, so this is a culmination of a couple of years of an event. Essentially, to tie into the Force Heresy as a whole, you have some folks that decided that they need to have an expeditionary force go into the Galactic South to relieve Imperial forces at Beta Garmin. So they'll go into this area in the Galactic South. They'll round up as much loyalists as they can. After they purge it, they'll go to Beta Garmin and help support the Imperial war effort there. Well, the traitor forces understand this, so they're starting to flood the region with traitors. So this battle is kind of a culmination of a couple of years where the loyalists have this one shot to hold the line, and by the 353rd Terran Expeditionary Force time to link up with them to have a united front against the traitor forces. If the loyalists fall on Califax, then the in-region loyalists will scatter to the wind, and the Terran Expeditionary Force will be outnumbered by what's called the Iron Front, this huge consolidated traitor push into the region. Well, I could say here that this is probably the most definitive loyalist victory we've had in the narrative campaign to date.
Oh, come on.
And they stopped the Iron Front cold.
I did my part.
I did not.
Yes,
chaos.
Well, it was fantastic. And so then what you guys did was you created basically a Google Docs form that once you completed your game and whatnot, and later when you were thinking about it, there were some questions on the form to fill out and give a little synopsis of how your game went, so that you guys could then edit this and put it into some type of record. I just thought that was a brilliant idea too.
Yeah.
And I mean, they kept reminding us, hey, don't forget to fill out the form, which you got to do with gamers. You got to do that with gamers. Yeah. So I filled mine out as soon as I got home. So I was very excited.
I'm laughing.
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do is create those interactive elements to help immerse people into the cinematic gameplay.
Yeah.
And,
smart.
This is kind of a turning point for us because a couple years to this point is us investing into this concept. And we feel like that we've hit proof of concept. Now we get to move forward to what this thing has become, which will be our next event in 6 months, where it's going to be more polished, it's going to be more concise, and the story is going to go from a bunch of isolated games that have funneled into one cohesive story arc with the Pax Gothamos Volume 1, or Volume 3 in this case, to a living document that'll keep growing as time goes on.
Very cool.
Very cool. That's such a neat concept of you have the physical artifact of the history of the games played and how the story has involved in your little sector of the universe here.
Yeah. Well, listen, Killian, thanks again. I appreciate your time. I think we both do. I hope our listeners have, but this was an experience we'll talk about for some time to come. So thank you very much.
And I absolutely can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah, without a doubt. and Josh isn't going to even
I won't have to twist Carl's arm.
No, you won't have to twist my arm to go. So All right. Thank you so much.
Very much appreciate you guys too. Thank you.
All right. All right, and we're back closing out the show. Again, can't speak highly enough about this event.
Yeah.
Can't speak highly enough about Titanicus. I'm really enjoying it. So that means they're going to cancel it any minute, right?
I won't be surprised if they don't come out with anything new for it for a while.
Because they move into the Imperialis.
Because they're moving the direction. They've already repackaged everything for Legions Imperialis.
Yep.
And they have a pretty robust range at this point. Like, if they don't come out with anything for a while, I think it's a great game. Like, if this game died, I would play it for the rest of my existence as a gamer and be completely happy with it as is. But we already know that Legions Imperialis is bringing out some new stuff for this game. They are coming out with new weapons for Warhounds, things like that. So it will naturally inject some life into that. And the two games are going to grow both the communities.
I think so.
And together. So I think it's a win-win there.
Well, I look forward to hearing you talk about Legions Imperialis.
I look forward to playing.
Stupid game. Okay. Anyway. Hey, listen, I recently went up to Vancouver, as I talked about, and played with the Play on Tabletop guys, with Nick up there at Play on Tabletop. And that video is available on their YouTube channel now publicly. So take a look, and it's there.
It's a good watch.
It's a good watch. Those guys were the best. We're going to have them on next episode to talk a little bit about their production and how all that works and what's involved in all that, because you want to talk about the way battle reports get filmed. I think they've kind of changed the game a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're doing some really, really interesting stuff up there. And it was a pleasure to go up there. So check out the video. It's fantastic. It's super fun. I posted a link to it in the IC's Facebook group, so you can see it there. Other than that, I don't know. We got the Patreon.
Going.
It's rocking solid still.
Lots of fun content there. Yep. Thank you for your support again. I always appreciate that.
Super needed. We appreciate it. And
got a YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you get all the sweet visual aids for that.
And speaking of which, thanks for all the feedback we received on the Grimdark Gauntlet.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've thought about that a lot. We've also thought about how we're going to improve that particular, I don't want to call it a segment because it's not a segment, that version of the show.
Right, yeah.
And what we're going to do there, we've got some really fun ideas, and we want to kind of take it to the next level too. And we're dead serious now about, we have our first winner about doing a Tournament of Champions type of situation when we get there, and narrowing down who really is the best
who has run the gauntlet.
The best at something. I don't know what it is, but they're the best at it. So. And I think you can expect too, we have a series of games like the ones that were involved in the Grimdark Gauntlet last time. Not always the same games we're going to play each episode. There'll be some staples, but it will not.
You can't have Bad Ab Black sitting by your camera there every game. It's not. Yeah, we're
gonna have different
games, different things. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to more of those as well. But again, thank you very much for the feedback. We actually, to be honest, we really appreciate critical feedback. Yeah. So when people give us feedback, like I'd like to see this or this done a little differently, like we have a discussion about it and figure out, sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But we always give it consideration.
Yeah. It's always good to hear.
Yeah. We got a YouTube channel. We got Facebook group. We've got
Discord,
Patreon, we got Discord, we got game, buddy. And we're gonna play more games. Yeah, and we're also talking about doing some just live hobby time stuff with people who want to join, that kind of stuff. So we got a bunch of stuff going on there. Anyway, you got anything else you want to add about any of this? I think we've kind of said
the one thing I'll say that not about Titanicus, because I think we've covered that pretty well today, is that I'm actually really excited to get more 2,000-point games of 40K in again. Obviously, I'll keep playing Titanicus games all day, but where I'm sitting with Necrons are in a great space, Sharks are in a good space, and Eldar are about to really take off for me. I'm just excited to play more of those bigger games.
Right on.
Yeah.
Me too. All right, we're going to set something up soon. Okay, well, based on that, let's go ahead and close it out. So this is Carl.
This is Josh.
And we're coming to you from the Astronomicon, where big damage comes in small packages.
And you too can own your hobby.
There you go. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.